Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Deal. The transfer portal has finally winded down. The coaching carousel within the Big Ten has finally winded down as well. You kind of get a good sense of what these teams are going into spring practice now. A way too early discussion around who's winning the Big Ten, who are the dark horses in this conference, with a full appreciation that this picture is going to change after spring practice, after that spring transfer portal window. I got some hot takes in my rankings. I mean, it's the time for hot takes. We're talking about Tuesday afternoon, February 18th. Let it fly in the comment section. I know y'all got some hot takes, and I know you got some takes about my hot takes. So let it fly in the comment section. That is by far the best part about doing these kind of conversations in the month of February. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'm going to give you the T-box here, putting myself on blast here. These are my Big Ten power rankings heading into the 2025 year as we sit right now. Where do you want to start here?
No, I full disclosure, I like your top three. I probably would have
it.
Oregon over Ohio State right now, just because I think what they were able to do in the portal and kind of what they have coming through as Dan Lanning's recruits kind of step into the forefold, if you will. I like that they've answered probably more questions than Ohio State has. Ohio State, again, are going to be super talented. They've recruited the way they've have for forever, so they're going to be loaded. But again, Oregon's going to be loaded, and I think they did answer more of their questions in the offseason. The team I struggle with is Michigan, because I feel like I'm in the same boat as last year, where it's I think people are so willing to overlook how important the quarterback spot is, and you don't need to be the greatest quarterback in the world. I don't know that Will Howard was the greatest quarterback in the world, but he was very good. He played clean football. Is Michigan going to get that this year is still the question, because again, I think a lot of us are putting a lot of stock in Bryce Underwood. I certainly am as a Michigan guy.
100%. I mean, you have to put Michigan in the title contender category because of the what if Bryce Underwood hits immediately year one. This was a Michigan team that without any quarterback play, I mean, it was the worst quarterback play in the Power Four. Beat a team like Ohio State, who won a national championship in Columbus, beat Alabama in the bowl game, return a lot of that pretty much whole roster that beat Alabama is coming back to Michigan going into 2025. Because of that what if factor with Bryce Underwood, you have to put them in that top tier. Now it's a little bit of like a roller coaster here, betting on a true freshman quarterback, but you have to put him there. Oregon, Ohio State. I do want to have a chance to defend myself because I know it's a hot take. Ohio State played very, very well, beat Oregon very, very badly in the Rose Bowl. Here's my oversimplistic take regarding Oregon and Ohio State and why I have Oregon the number one team. Most importantly for Oregon, Dill, this is to me the deepest Oregon team that we've seen under Dan Lanning. Like me, it's very clear that he's going into year four. He's had a chance to stack his high school recruiting classes. He's had a chance to supplement in the transfer portal. There are some question marks on this roster, starting at the quarterback spot with Dante Moore. But from a depth standpoint, something that, excuse me, I just think gets massively overlooked in the landscape of college football. Look, if you want to be one of the best teams in all of college football, if you want to play your best football late in December and January, you got to have depth. And by far, this is the deepest Oregon team that we have seen under Dan Lanning. And then you look at Ohio State, it's not a depth question mark. It's not a talent question mark. It's a continuity question mark. You got to replace two of the best coordinators in college football, and Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles. And then you have to replace a very good chunk of your two deep on both sides of the football. Most importantly, that defense that was elite in the college football playoffs. Ohio State's going to be really dang good. Got them at the number 2 team in the Big Ten. But because of those questions that you have, that's kind of my oversimplistic reasoning for putting Oregon in this number one spot.
How close is your gap with Penn State and Ohio State? Because that's the one I struggle with. I'm just still so concerned about Penn State's wide receiver play, especially losing Tyler Warren. That probably is the bigger deal, because he was the only guy who dependably could catch balls in big moments. Again, they really didn't go out and get high-level wide receivers in the portal. So that, to me, Penn State, I think their defense, or I don't think, I know that defense can be really good. I know they lost some really good players, but that's just been a defensive culture that's been really dominant. I know their offensive line's going to be good and they're going to be able to run the ball, but I just think when you go up against teams like Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan's defense, you need to have your counterpunch. And they kind of had it last year because Tyler Warren was like a unicorn. do they have that this year?
Here are the pros and cons of Penn State. Well, like the big pro here is what happens with Drew going into 2025, because you saw him take a big step in the 2024 year. If he takes another big step, you're looking at one of the better quarterbacks in college football. I'm exactly with you. I got two big concerns. You noted the pass catchers, and that's so frustrating. I mean, James Franklin went out and made some massive hires, most notably Jim Knowles, a national championship caliber hire, but it didn't really do much in the transfer portal to replace your pass catching production that you, quite frankly, just didn't have last year, and then that you're losing with Tyler Ward. And I like Luke Reynolds. It's going to take more than Luke Reynolds to replace the impact that Tyler Warren had, one of the better tight ends we've seen play college football in a while. Here's another concern that I do have. The more I've kind of dug into Penn State and watched some Penn State games back, the more I realized Abdul Carter, and I know there's a lot of really good football players, in that Penn State defense. Abdul Carter was head and shoulders the best one, and it wasn't really that close. He's a guy that it's hard to replace, and I could see it's not like Penn State's defense falls off a cliff. They'll still be a top 15, top 20 unit in the country. Can they be a top 10, top 5 unit in the country without Abdul Carter is a legitimate question that I'm asking.
And that, I think the question's warranted because, like, is the offense going to take a huge step? I don't totally see it now unless Drew really plays a Herculean game. So to me, I still kind of feel like Oregon, Ohio State, like there's a bit of a gap, frankly.
I probably would agree with that. The one other thing I should have noted with Penn State, I love year 2 with Coach Koldenicki, especially with all that returning production. I think he's a great offensive coordinator, and even though
you got to get some lineouts,
I'm saying, Dill, even though they don't have the pass catchers and we'll see if they look. Penn State goes out and lands a big name in the transfer portal in the spring. You can sign me up for I'll be buying some Penn State stock. But I do think Coach Koldenicki's an OC that if you are maybe lacking pass catchers, he will scheme it up for you, and he will give these wide receivers opportunities to go make some things happen. Here's where I think it gets fun. These dark horse teams, really, really fun to talk about, legitimate dark horses in the Big Ten. I want to start with this, and it's something we can all agree on. Probably should have noted it at the top. This is the best conference in college football, not only from a top-end standpoint, but from a depth standpoint too. You're looking at an Illinois team that I'm putting in the dark horse category that just went 10-3, beat a very good South Carolina team in the bowl game. And I'll tell you what, South Carolina wanted to win that football game. If y'all watched it, Illinois is going to be a very, very fun football team to watch in 2025.
And I really wrestle with having Illinois. Like, could they be a title contender? Because they played like title contender football last year, in my opinion. Now, similar to Penn State, like I wonder, are they going to have the replacements at the wideout spot? Because as much as they're returning their offensive line for the most part, and that's going to be a great unit, a physical unit. I don't love the running back position, frankly. I don't think it's like they have that guy to not lean on. They're going to be able to lean on the running game, or are they going to have a running game like what Michigan had in 2023 where you don't need a ton from your passing attack? I think they probably need a little bit more than maybe what the outside talent tells me they have. But other than that, it's like that is going to be.
This is where you're going wrong with your eval on both Illinois, and I know you're going to say the same dang thing about USC. You're deciding to look at the question marks here. You got to start with the positives, especially when you're talking an Illinois team that you talk about. All right, what I love about what Brett Bielema's doing is he is looking at this program and saying, hey, we probably can't recruit to the level that Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State can, right? We have to fill our roster up with guys that fit what we want to do. You start looking at this depth chart and say, yeah, that's a Brett Bielema coach football program that is good where they need to be. Offensive line is filled with not only big physical dudes, they're all upperclassmen. I mean, they're all redshirt seniors and seniors. I love that going into 2025. And then what I really love is, Dill, how many quarterbacks are you taking over Luke Altmaier right now in the Big Ten? And you look at some of these top teams, Dante Moore, new quarterback. Julian Sam, probably new quarterback. You're going to have a true freshman at Michigan. There ain't many quarterbacks.
I was like maybe one or two, maybe Dylan Raiola, and maybe Drew Allard. I'd probably take Luke over all of them, frankly. So
you're high on Luke. So why would that's my problem though. You didn't start with that.
Yeah, but their wideout, I will say their wideout play was awesome last year, and I do
Pat Bryant was
Luke Altmaier out because you said it. Pat Bryant was awesome, but Zachary Franklin had kind of a gap year at Ole Miss. Don't exactly know what happened. He came in and kind of looked like that guy I think Ole Miss thought they were getting. So they lose two really dynamic skill guys or wide receivers on the boundary. Like, does Luke Altmaier fall back a little bit from that? Because I do think those guys helped his development out a fair amount.
100% agree.
And also, I want to like say, like, I don't know that Luke Altmaier is the most talented quarterback in the Big Ten because, like, certainly I probably like my chances going in with Dante Moore or Julian Saint, even maybe Bryce Underwood a little bit more. But in terms of like what I know Luke Altmaier is going to do, there's not really more proven production. Maybe Fernando Mendoza probably should have put him in that list too. But aside from them, like,
that's kind of what I mean. Like, look, am I saying Luke Altmaier is going to finish the season at the end of 2025 as the best quarterback in the conference? No, probably not, because you got Dante Moore, Julian Saint, Bryce Underwood. But as we sit February 18th, like, there ain't many quarterbacks I'm taking right now.
Better Big Ten quarterback than anyone else, probably.
That I should say I trust more. I don't trust many quarterbacks more in this conference than Luke. And I feel like Brett Bielema's finally. I think he's just got this. It's a Brett Bielema team, man. It feels like that too. I like Illinois going into this year. The only thing why I don't put them in that title contender yet is do they have that? If you want to win the Big Ten, which I think is the best conference of college football, I think you need that top end talent, and I don't know if Illinois quite has that. USC, I'll give you the T-box. I know you're going to lay into this range. You think I'm too high in USC, so I'll give you the T-box first, then we'll go at it here. What do you got for USC?
USC had far too much attrition in my mind of like guys not only going to the draft, but like hitting the portal who should not be hitting the portal. And I do think Lincoln Riley's taken some steps to address that with what they've done with the player personnel hires. But going into this year, I mean, you lose Emmanuel Pregnon. That's not a guy like good teams lose. Right now, I question, like, is their offensive line going to be good enough? I don't think they are going to get great quarterback play unless Husan Longstreet really surprises on the upside. And with that, like, can you be a defensive-led team right now as USC? I don't know that I'm there yet with them. I think it's going in the right direction.
You hear what you just said? You don't think you're doubting Lincoln Riley in quarterback?
Yeah, I am doubting there. I am doubting that quarterback spot right now.
I see. That's one thing that I have learned in my college football fandom career is not to doubt Lincoln Riley in quarterbacks. And am I getting up here?
Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray aren't walking through that door, Jay.
I'm surprised he didn't go with Caleb Williams there. But because there's a lot of quarterbacks that Lincoln Riley has done really, really well with. Am I saying USC? Because to me, it's a little bit of a concern too. I told the USC fans this the other day. It's like Jaden did not exactly win that quarterback one job for me going into 2025. You saw a lot of like jaw-dropping, head-scratching mistakes from Jaden. I do think you have a really talented quarterback in Hasan Longstreet. I kind of just blindly trust that the quarterback play is going to be good enough for USC. Here's what I don't think, and you said you don't trust USC to be a defensive-led football team. I think that's fair to say. They are going to be significantly better than what they've been in the past. They took a step under Danton Lynn year one. I can't wait to see what year two looks like, not only because it's year two and people are more comfortable with the Danton Lynn defense. They're night and day different on the defensive line. Last year in the Big Ten, they had two defensive linemen that went over 300 pounds. They weren't deep and they were small. They got 7 now, and it's deep. I mean, there's 6, 7 guys that I feel comfortable playing on the inside of that defensive line for USC. You don't
really have a ton of guys that you really have seen much consistency from.
There's enough. It's
Keyshawn Silver and Jamal Jarrett. I don't think you've seen them play great football throughout their careers. Like super talented out of high school. I think they're still riding that momentum a little bit, but those two need to simply play better ball than they've played in their
country.
Like you graduated Tompkins, like
I'm trying to let you speak here. The people in the chat have been telling me to let you speak. Yeah, I think you were cutting out a little bit too, so I'm not gonna only blame myself. Here's what I think. You're an economics guy, Dale. You got a degree from in economics. It's a number thing. I mean, I'm kind of venturing off into territory I ain't really good with. It's a numbers game to me. Keyshawn Silver, especially with Coach Henderson working with these guys. That's another side note. That defensive coaching staff for USC, it's might be one of the better staffs that you see in the Big Ten versus 2 years ago. It was by far the worst with Alex Grinch. Keyshawn Silver, Jamal Garrett, Jared, Devin Tompkins, Jakeem Stewart coming in, Carlin Jones, G. Abasiri. I mean, there are enough guys that I look at and say I am excited to see what they can be in 2025 that I trust that this unit is going to be pretty good versus last year at this time we were like, all right, well, Bear Alexander's solid but inconsistent, and that was about it in terms of guys we trusted. And so I think from a number standpoint, it's hard to see this defensive line not getting massively better. And then it's just
I don't like want to say like USC belongs in the dark horse category. I probably have Nebraska right behind Illinois in terms of a team I trust a little bit more right now. Just because I do think Dylan Raiola, I think he was really good. I think their wideout inconsistency at times, like the amount of drops they had, and maybe just like him being a shade off. Like if that just like gets corrected and they hit more big plays, because they were close on a lot of those last year. They just like a miss there, a half a step overthrow, like that type of thing. You tighten that up a little bit. Nebraska's a really good team. Now, I know what you're going to say. Same questions about the defensive line. Is that interior good enough? Yeah, I got the questions. I don't know that they brought in they brought in depth pieces. Let's just be quite frank in the portal. Like, do they have that Nash or Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker type guys to? But I just think the roster around it is a lot better. I think their ability to go out and get really big time wideouts was huge. I think this is gonna be a really good team.
To me, that's really the question mark that I have as well.
I have fewer questions about Nebraska than I do about both Indiana and USC. I think I've got one question about Nebraska.
That could be that actually really could be a fair argument. There is that they're. I kind of had that big question mark in it, and to me, it's such a big question mark because Dill, I think that's so important to Nebraska. Like last year, that was like the engine of their defense, in my opinion. Nash and Ty on the inside. It allowed them to play with light boxes. They got a ton of pass rush production from the inside of that defensive line. It's hard to see it being anything close to what it was last year with Nash and Ty, and that's probably the reason why I have them coming in at number 8. But that is a good point. There are less question marks. Let's talk about that last one, Indiana. I know you are just a wait. I think, is this fair to say you're just like a wait and see? Like, let me see.
No, I'm not really a wait and see. I think last year was a mirage. I don't buy any.
God, here we go again.
Not a top 10 team in my opinion. Every time they played big time teams, and even Michigan, who was definitely not a big time team but had a big time unit, they didn't look the part. I don't think so. That to me, like, yeah, they beat up on a UCLA and they beat up on some weak teams in Nebraska. Like, they're losing a lot of really good players, especially another team that's losing 2 defensive linemen who you talk about engines. CJ West and number 99 Carpenter, they were kind of the engines of that defense. I get that.
Mikel Kamara was the engine, and he's back. And also, you just called Nebraska a weak team, and now you're trying to argue that Indiana should be back.
I think they did a lot of upgrading this year.
Yeah, okay, so here's my thing with Indiana.
Did a whole lot of upgrading, frankly.
Okay. Here's the thing is that I like about Indiana. One, you just have to respect Kirk Cignetti, right? He is everywhere. And look, I know you don't like him. Quite frankly, I don't think I'd like him either. He'd be not on my list to like go grab a drink with. He's quite frankly seems like kind of an annoying dude at times. I agree with that. But he's a damn good football coach. Dill, there is a real possibility that Fernando Mendoza, from a trade standpoint, is an upgrade over Curtis Rourke. They keep all those difference makers at wide receiver, at least 2 of them, they're back for Indiana next year. You have Mikel Kamara, who's one of the best edge rushers in the country. There's that spotted top end talent that I don't think enough people really appreciate for Indiana. To me, it's just like there's obviously a lot of moving parts. It was a very transfer portal. And that's another thing that you could say is like, I got confidence that Kurt Cignetti can bring it all together because he kind of did it last year with Indiana as well.
I just don't know that they made like big time additions in the portal. And again, like was every place a spot to do it? It's like I still like, especially the back end of the defense. I think the offensive line, like maybe a few questions there. I don't know that they brought in great offense. Like Zen Mikulski and Cleo, like are
Benson.
Those guys, Cleo, are these guys you have a ton of confidence in? I personally don't. I do think, again, I think like there was some magic in the Indiana at times. So I feel like people disrespect what Curtis Rourke did because there were times I was watching him. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't care if you like put the like 85 Bears out there. They're just like the ball's in the perfect spot. Their wide receivers are making really good catches. Like, what do you do to defend it? I do feel like there was a fair amount of that last year. I just don't know that Mendoza can give you that. I don't know that he can give you that. That was just like really well
So
fine.
if they put together another great season, you're gonna start buying in
I'll
Indiana.
have to.
You
I
have
don't
to.
know. I know
And
I'm.
look, Dill, I was in the same
I know I'm a
spot.
pig-headed enough idiot to maybe not, but I should be.
I was in the same spot that you were in 6 months ago. We're midway through the college football season. Indiana's whooping up on some not so good teams. And I just say, I don't think they're all that good. I don't think they're all that good. Then they beat a Washington team that I really liked. Then they beat a Nebraska team badly with a backup quarterback that I really liked. And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, Indiana's a pretty freaking good football team. And yeah, they struggled when they played those top end guys because they probably don't have that top end talent. But holy smokes, at some point I had to give respect to what Kirk Cignetti was doing. Last thing, teams that I have not in the dark horse category that you think will be interesting in 2025.
Minnesota and Washington. And I think Minnesota right now, I don't think they're like, you probably can argue they're not a dark horse team because do they have the top end ability to like actually beat teams like Oregon and Ohio State? They haven't really showed that, quite frankly, but like they're a pick 'em team against those three teams aside from Illinois. I think like you go with that, those are even games. I think those three teams probably have a little bit of a higher ceiling, maybe not Indiana in my opinion, but those other teams, they certainly have that ceiling. But Minnesota and what PJ Fleck's done, he probably should be in that dark horse list, in my opinion. I think that's a really solid team. I think Zach Byron's interesting. Very talented.
I'm not a Zach Byron guy like you are, but that's kind of why I have him lower.
I mean, they did it with Brosmer. I don't think Brosmer played particularly good.
Brosmer played good ball, Dell. Brosmer
Maybe
played
towards the end of the year, but not great early.
Washington is to me, and I'll close it out on this. Washington to me is a team that I think we could be in the future talking about as a dark horse team. Right now, going into year 2, there are still some like moving pieces concerns that you have. Like there's not as much continuity that you probably would have liked if you're a Washington fan going into year 2 of Jedd Fisch. You have to replace a defense coordinator. A lot of guys moving out of it. I look at it and say, I think it's just another year way of like Jedd Fisch really building the foundation before we're working our way up the Big Ten. But I do think Washington will be working their way up at some point down the line. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it.
One thing about Washington is they have Damon Williams, and Damon Williams,
he's fun.
Super excited.
He's fun. Yeah, I think it's a little bit
of
a roller coaster.
Not enough continuity, probably not a good enough roster around him. He is going to be exciting.
The thing is, Damon Williams gives you that ceiling that's fun.
Oh, yeah.
There's a high ceiling to Damon Williams' game. I think the floors might be kind of low too, but the ceiling is very, very high. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Let it fly in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy it, consider subscribing to the channel. A lot to work out over the next couple months. Appreciate you guys. Peace.